Hello, everyone. My name is Chad Frischmann. It's a pleasure to be here today with you all, wherever you might be in the world, to celebrate and take action during the It's Time Festival. I'm here to talk to you about how we collectively can solve the climate emergency that we're faced with today, that our children will face tomorrow, and all future generations to come will be impacted by. I'm head of research for an organization called Project Drawdown. Project Drawdown is a research, communications, and engagement organization that maps, measures, describes, and helps to accelerate the most substantive solutions, technologies, and practices that exist today that, when taken together as a system of solutions, can achieve drawdown. Drawdown is that point in time when atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases begins to decline on a year-to-year basis. It's that point when we take out more greenhouse gases, more of those heat-trapping gases than we put into Earth's atmosphere. And the proposition is really simple. If we can change the composition of these gases in the atmosphere over time, we can affect global cooling, essentially stopping global warming and beginning the long process of reversing it. But more than just a technical definition, drawdown is a new way of thinking about and acting on global warming. It's that marker on the horizon, pointing us to a future that we actually want, a future where reversing global warming is possible through a system of solutions that changes our social and economic systems to become more regenerative by design. But where do we begin? Well, first, we have to understand what are the sources of those greenhouse gases, whether that's carbon dioxide, methane, fluorinated gases, or nitrous oxide. Where are they coming from? And then once they're in the atmosphere, how do we actually pull down those gases using natural or engineered sinks? And how do we improve society to make it more just, equitable, and inclusive to ensure that these solutions work for all people? Well, as a starting point, greenhouse gases come from just about everything we do as a human species. Whether that's the electricity generated from coal, oil, or gas-fired plants to turn on our lights to provide light every day, or it's when the gas that's burned to heat up our homes in furnaces, whether it's through the production of all the stuff that we consume in industry, or even the decisions that we make every day about what we consume and how that food is produced. And also, of course, when we move around in the world, whether that's in a car or in planes across the world. All of these activities produce greenhouse gases that enter the atmosphere. The good thing is that every year, some of those gases, particularly carbon dioxide and some methane, is pulled down from the atmosphere using natural sinks. These are our terrestrial or land and ocean ecosystems that through several processes, but principally through photosynthesis, convert carbon dioxide to plants' biomass and soil organic carbon. The problem here is that 59% of all that we put into the atmosphere remains there because of some of the limitations of our land and ocean sinks, and because of the deterioration of much of our land systems, but also just the sheer amount of stuff we consume and electricity that we generate. All that stuff enters into the atmosphere, and 59% remains there. So what can we do to stop the sources, to turn off the sources as much as possible to get to zero? And what can we do to enhance or to turn up the sinks, to enhance them so that we can pull even more out of the atmosphere? That is the ticket. That's the key to achieving drawdown and therefore to stopping global warming? Well, there are solutions that exist today that are readily available that do one or more of three basic mechanisms. One is to reduce consumption, reduce the consumption of all that stuff through technological efficiencies and through behavior change. That reduces all the energy, all the inputs that are used to produce that. But we can also replace existing technologies or practices that are part of the problem with alternatives that are part of the solution. Finally, how do we restore by enhancing those things, restore carbon to terrestrial and ocean ecosystems, enhancing those things, and also how to restore carbon to useful forms using engineered things that can be used for the production of materials and many other things that are good for our economy. So it's one or more of these three mechanisms taken together that allows us, and really the only three mechanisms to achieve drawdown, which again is that point in time when atmospheric concentrations begin to decline on a year-to-year basis. So Project Drawdown has mapped out all through these three main areas, sources, sinks, and society, mapped out different sectors that again touch upon nearly everything we do as a species and how we interact with our natural environment. We've mapped this out in a new framework that evaluates real existing technologies and practices, tangible solutions that exist today. And it's through all of these solutions taken together that we can achieve our rather ambitious goals. Because it's not a technology question. It's not a technology question. It's a matter of will. Because these are readily available solutions. And they're economically viable. They're financially feasible. What it takes is for us to really look at ourselves and see, what is that future that we want? How do we get there? And take action to adopt the many solutions that are available to us. But I don't want you to spend too much time looking deeply into this beautiful, but rather complicated schematic. I want to take just a moment and see if we can do this wherever you are in the world. See if it's possible. I'd like you to take a few minutes and close your eyes. Give your eyes a rest from looking at that beautiful diagram. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to try to imagine what I ask you and just answer to yourself yes or no. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if this is going to work. Okay? So go ahead and close your eyes. I'd like you to imagine, if you can, a solar panel. Can you imagine reaching out and putting your hand on that panel? You may not want to, but can you do it? Can you imagine walking out into a field to the base of a wind turbine? Can you put your hands on that metal base and maybe look up? Can you see the blade spinning? Can you just about feel the wind on your face? I want you to turn around that field. Can you look out and imagine a pasture land, a pasture with livestock grazing in the distance? Can you do that? Can you just about smell the manure? I mean, can you imagine, this is a little bit harder, a little trickier, but can you imagine trees on that pasture land? Can you imagine them popping up next to the livestock? Now, I want you to imagine walking on a hike through a protected forest. I want you to try to put your hands around a tree. Can you feel its bark? Can you just about smell the pine? Now I want you to imagine your favorite plate of pasta, maybe with some meatballs on it. Does it smell good? Does it taste good? Can you just about, are you getting hungry? Can you imagine taking those meatballs off? Are you still, can you still smell it and you're still hungry? Now, I want you to imagine some rather harder things here. If you can, try for me here. I want you to imagine, can you just about see a circular economy? Can you put out or touch your hands? Can you touch the Sustainable Development Goals? Can you put your arms around a regenerative system? It's a bit more challenging. If any of you could imagine any of those three things, please reach out to me. I've yet to find anybody who can really reach out and touch any of these things. Maybe something a little simpler. Can you imagine, if you can, a smile on a young child's face, a young person's face, when he or she receives her diploma after 12 to 13 years of schooling? Can you reach out and put your arms around that young person? Can you feel the pride in her accomplishment? Now, I want you to open your eyes if you can. So please, wherever you are, please open your eyes. The point I want to make here is that we need to be able to touch, taste, smell, and feel the real solutions that are right in front of us. Real technologies and practices that we know work, that are scientifically valid, that are already scaling, that are financially feasible, things that we know exist. We need them. We also need broad frameworks like a circular economy and sustainable development goals and regenerative systems. These are all incredibly important. But there's a lot of frameworks. There's going to be more. These are conceptual ideas that help us guide us along the pathway to the future that we want. But to take the first step towards that future, we really need to understand how to touch, taste, smell, and feel the solutions that are right in front of us. And the exciting thing is that they are here. They're here for us. They're readily available. We have technologies that can harness the natural resources around us to produce an abundance of electricity for all of our needs, both on land and in the oceans. We can harness the power of the sun like every other form of life in urban environments and in rural locations. We can change the way we move around in the world with joy. We can change how we work as we're doing right here today, as I beam across the planet speaking to you today. We can change how we move our goods around, all that stuff that we produce, change how we move it around the world to make it more efficient. And we can change the nature of the stuff itself to be reusable, not just reusable and recycled, but built by design to be used again and again and again. And we can change the nature of the stuff that we produce as well to make it, instead of designing for end of life, we can design for rebirth by making stuff that is built of life itself. Bamboo is a wonderful substance that can be used for so many different things, from bikes to bridges to clothing to buildings. And we can and we will protect our forests, because in doing so, not only do you prevent all the carbon, all the rich carbon that's stored in the soil and in this biomass from entering the atmosphere, but we protect our biodiversity, protect all life on the planet. And we can take currently degraded land and restore it in both temperate regions and in tropical regions. And the process of restoring this forest brings carbon down. This is drawdown in action every year. As we restore life to degraded land, we restore life and we bring carbon back to the land. And we can also protect our marine ecosystems and restore our fish stocks, restore kelp forests that can sequester carbon, bringing that carbon back to our ocean environments. But we can also produce food and produce materials and stuff from our oceans in a sustainable ways and transform feedstocks that become less of a stressor on our land resources. But we can also fundamentally change the way we produce food itself to make it more regenerative. And what do we mean by this? Well, regenerative annual cropping is a time-tested practice that's been practiced for generations. This is how we used to produce food, and we still have indigenous and local communities producing food in this way. Regenerative animal cropping is a combination of reduced or no tillage, cover cropping, rotation, and the use of compost or manure as fertilizers. And what this does is it restores soil health and productivity, benefits smallholders and large farming operations. It helps retain water, increases yield, and brings carbon back to the land. So we can shift the way we do business to make it regenerative instead of exploitive. And yes, it's possible to have pasture land with forests, silvopasture. This has been practiced for millennia and is still practiced all over the world today and produces great outcomes for both livestock, farmers, and for the planet. But it's not just how we're producing food, it's what we're consuming that matters. And a plant-rich diet is not a vegan or vegetarian diet, though I applaud any who make those life decisions. It's a healthy diet in terms of how much we're consuming and what we're consuming. It means reducing the amount of meat or animal-based proteins that we consume overall to healthy levels and increasing our consumption of beautiful plants. It's not just what we're consuming, and it's what we're not consuming. About 30 to 40% of all food that's produced is wasted. It's not even consumed. We have 800 million people on the planet going hungry today. This is perhaps one of the dumbest things we could be doing today as a species. Now, there are many reasons why this happens, but by reducing food loss and waste, by preventing it from happening in the first place, we can feed the world's population and reduce the stressors on our planet for croplands to produce that food. In fact, when we combine the system as a whole, when we start thinking about all these solutions together, our research shows that by adopting reduced food waste, plant-rich diets, and all those regenerative agricultural practices, we would produce enough food on current cropland to feed the world's population now until 2050 and beyond, without ever having to cut down any forests. And there would be enough left over to produce some dedicated biomass for biofuels, for organic insulation, for many other bio-based materials for us. It's amazing if we really think to reimagine our food systems, how much benefit it can have to people and planet. And of course, education. We can provide equal quality and access to education for girls and boys wherever they are in the world today. And we can provide equally access to voluntary reproductive health care. And the combination of this family planning and education shows that significantly transforms families' household livelihoods in the future, changing the composition of their household, reducing family size, increased or delayed onset of marriage, and increased economic opportunities. This has the effect of reducing population growth and therefore reducing all these stressors, future potential stressors on our planet. And this human rights-based approach has a huge effect on the rest of the whole system. So this is the drawdown framework. And there are many other solutions that I wasn't able to cover today, but these are all real. They all exist today. They all can be implemented, and you can all take a role in implementing and finding the solutions that matter most to you in your day-to-day lives. So drawdown is possible. It's absolutely possible to achieve this goal, but we can only do so when we challenge existing systems, right? We have to really fundamentally shift the way we do business. First step in that is understanding that we're operating in a global system of systems where everything intersects. Health and education affects all these other sectors, and everything else is interconnected in a web of systems that work together globally, regionally, and even locally. They're all interconnected. But we can shift the system to be more like nature. There are real pathways to shifting to alternatives, enhancing efficiencies, shifting production, and so on across all of these different areas when we think of this as an organic ecosystem, all connected. And this is the future that we need to envision. Because when we do so, we can actually and implement all of these solutions as a system of solutions. We can achieve our climate targets. We can achieve our 2 degrees Celsius warming target. This graph represents a total carbon dioxide equivalent, either avoided from entering the atmosphere or sequestered or get pulled down from the atmosphere over a 30-year period from all these solutions. And this allows us to achieve our 2 degrees Celsius warming target. And we can also be more ambitious and achieve a 1.5 degrees Celsius warming target. And this is a set of solutions that get us there. So we can achieve our targets when we start to really accelerate and are ambitious with our goals. But we can also go beyond the targets themselves and achieve other types of goals. For example, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which aim to, by 2030, address many of the world's challenges, like trying to achieve complete elimination of poverty, zero hunger, improving health and well-being for all people, quality education, reduce inequalities, gender equality, etc. We can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals when we implement the drawdown system of solutions for climate, because everything is interconnected. We see that all of the solutions that we outline to solve the climate emergency can also directly help to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And indeed, I dare say, go beyond the Sustainable Development Goals, to moving beyond the goals to that future that we actually want, that regenerative future, the shifting of that system from one that's inherently exploitative and extractive to a new normal, a new future that's by nature, because it's fundamentally connected to nature, fundamentally a new future that is restorative and regenerative. That's what's exciting about, the most exciting thing about, in my mind, to achieving drawdown is we get to solve so many other challenges and really shift towards that regenerative future that we want. And these are the opportunities that we have to create that future. And so now is the time to do it. We all have a role to play, now more than ever before, because the decisions that we make, every one of us every day, has an impact that affects what's happening with us today, because we're feeling the impact of climate change now. Our children are feeling it tomorrow, and future generations to come. Maybe for the first time in human history, our decisions that we make truly have meaning. So I ask you all to join us, to link arms and being part of the one generation, the regeneration, not generation X, Y, or Z, but one generation interlinked, arm in arms, to achieve this future that we want. Please come, I ask you to join me in becoming part of the regeneration and find the solutions that matter most to you, whether that's about the dietary choices you have, or how you can reduce your food waste, or buying an electric vehicle, or any of the many, many solutions. Let drawdown be your own, choose your own adventure. Find your pathway along the set of solutions that are readily available that you can implement on a day-to-day basis. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to have me on and to talk with you all today. It was a great pleasure. And please reach out anytime with any questions that you may have. And I look forward to seeing the rest of the program today. Thank you so much, and be well.